Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. I just received the spring kit from the Stamps of Life in the mail today, and I'm excited to share with you all of the goodies contained in the kit. And I will also be making some cards with you with this kit. So let's go ahead and get started. And I want to just first show you the paper pad. And by the way, before I get started showing you the products that are in here, this kit is currently sold out, and I do not believe that they're going to be getting any more in stock. However, I do know that many of my subscribers did purchase this kit, and I'm sure that you probably are wanting me to make some cards with it just to get some ideas. So that's what I'm doing. So hopefully this will give you some inspiration using your kits for those of you that did receive your kits in the mail and did purchase those. So it does have a paper pad. It's the Spring Basics collection. And I'll just quickly go through here. First of all, the colors in this kit are Sunshine, which is a brand new color to the Stamps of Life. It's a yellow color. And Blue Jay, Ocean Kiwi, Cherry, and Pixie. And the Sunshine color, I actually picked up some of the cardstock. This is brand new. This was an additional item that you could purchase. But it is a yellow cardstock, and I purchased this separately, so I will be incorporating some of this in my cards. So it does have the Sunshine with the gingham, and then as you go through, well, that's a really pretty pixie with the polka dots, and then there's some Sunshine hearts, some more pixie. So you can just kind of see the different papers that are included in this pad. Really pretty spring colors, and I love these two colors together. So that looks like the cherry, and I love that. It's so pretty. And then it goes back to the beginning. Okay, so each paper you get 2 of each. And it also comes with this stencil. It's a wedding circle stencil. There's also this stamp set, Hello Spring. There's a butterfly, some grass, For My Sweet Funny Bunny, Sending Spring Hugs, Happy Mail. There's a sun, Make Happy Happen, some more grass, and a fence. So that's the stamp set. There's also this bunny, and this is actually a die that you can put together in the shape of a bunny. And I will be making a card with that. There's also these embellishments. So these are chipboard pieces. These are some flowered chipboard pieces in the corresponding colors. And these are some really pretty epoxy dots. They look like they're probably in the ocean color. And then the brand new paper color also has a brand new ink color and refill. So you get one of the brand new ink pads, the Sunshine color, as well as the refill. And there are 2 ribbon. So there's a pretty ribbon. And there's also these stickers. These are silver, almost like a metallic heart sticker. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make some cards with you today. Stay tuned.
So for this card, I want to start out by putting this bunny die set together, and I did die cut it out of the cherry, the powdered sugar, as well as the licorice for the eyes. Those are the different colors cardstocks that I've used. I am using the cherry ink to ink blend the edges of the cherry cardstock, and I'm going to be using the cloud ink to ink blend the edges of the powdered sugar cardstock. I think that just by adding a little bit of the gray color to the ends of the white cardstock, it just makes it look like dimensional, almost like there's fur on the edges of that bunny. And for the tail, I just want to point out that there are 2 pieces. There's 2 layering pieces there, as well as for the ears. There are 2 layering pieces for the ears. So you can actually cut those out in pattern paper or other color cardstock just to decorate this bunny even more. I think it would be cute. And there are a few cards that I'm going to do later on that cut that out of different color cardstock so you can see how cute it is. And I do suggest with the eyes and the nose and the mouth that before you run those dies through your die cut machine that you put double-sided adhesive on the back of the cardstock. It just makes it easier to adhere to the face when it already has the sticky on the back, because adding glue, especially to that mouth, will be challenging. Now there are no dies for cheeks in this for this bunny, but I do suggest that if you have any of those long blending brushes that are kind of like the sticks. With the smaller brushes, you can probably just take some pink ink and use for the cheeks. Or you can take some small circle dies and cut out some cheeks, but I didn't have any of those, so mine's not getting any cheeks. I am using this Easter egg fold it die set. It does come with 3 dies, and it makes an A2 size card shaped like an Easter egg. And you'll need to fold your cardstock in half. I'm using the cherry cardstock, and I'm taking the largest die in the set, and I'm positioning the fold immediately to the right of the die. And once you run that through the die cut machine, it does cut out an A2 size card shaped like an egg. I'm then taking that same die and I'm just cutting out a solid piece of cardstock. It's not folded. That's going to be my layering piece to go on top so that the entire egg looks completely round, because right now that A2 size card, it's got a little bit of the cardstock cut off the edge. So this layering piece here is what I'm going to decorate, and then eventually I will put that on top of the card base. So to cut out the layering piece with all the flowers, you're going to take that die and you're going to position it inside of the smaller egg die. So remember I said there's 3 dies in the set. There's the largest die, which makes the A2 size shape card. Then there's a smaller egg shape, and then there's this flower egg with the flowers. So the die with the flowers is going to be positioned inside of the smaller egg, and then you're going to die cut that, and it's going to come up with what you see here on the screen, and that's cut out with the ocean cardstock. And here I'm doing it again, cutting it out with the lemonade cardstock. So I actually have 2 pieces, which I was trying to decide which one I wanted to put on top, the yellow or the blue. But I think I'm going to go with the ocean cardstock, and I did punch all of those flowers out of that. And the yellow flowers that you see there off to the side are what I'm going to layer inside of all of those cutouts. Now, because I didn't put double-sided adhesive on the back of this egg before I ran it through my die cut machine, I do have to apply glue. And when I'm applying glue, I'm making sure that I'm getting that glue in all of those little corners of those flowers, because I want to make sure that this adheres flat to the card and there's no paper coming up. So here I'm just taking my flowers, I'm just poking the rest of the holes out of these flowers. You can see the one that's already on the card, it has a larger flower in the center, and then some of the others have just small holes around. So I'm punching all of those out just because I like how that cherry cardstock shows through. Now if you wanted to use pattern paper here, you can die cut your pattern paper out of that large flower or large egg die to get these flower shapes and then put those in. You can do some ink blending on some paper and die cut that out if you wanted to have more of an ink blended look. You also can just leave all the flowers out altogether and just have the cherry cardstock show through. It's really your choice how you want to decorate this egg. But I decided just to use the 3 colors. So, and again, because I didn't put the double-sided adhesive, I'm having to add glue to all of these little pieces and add them back to my card. Now this is an A2 size shaped Easter egg card, so you can actually use this card and just, you know, put a sentiment on it and put it in the mail and use just the card. But I am going to actually attach the bunny to the front of this card, and you'll see later on that when I attach the bunny that it's actually a little bit too large to fit in an envelope, so you just have to get a larger envelope, and I found that it will actually take a square envelope if you're going to attach the bunny to this. Okay, so here I'm just using some glue to attach this layer to my card base, and you can see now it looks like a completely finished perfect oval. And here's where I'm going to attach the bunny, and I'm actually going to attach the bunny using glue, applying it to the card itself, and then put the bunny on top. I just found it would be easier to do that so I know exactly where my glue is going and I don't have any excess on the bunny. Here I'm just making sure the whiskers and everything are attached fully. And I'm using a hello die, and I think this is the Words for Jars. I'll put all of the links to all of the products in my blog, so you'll be able to see exactly the die set that I used here. And now I'm just taking some enamel dots, filling in the centers of those flowers, just because I think it adds some nice dimension and additional bling to this card. And then I'm going to add a bow to make this a little girl bunny, and that completes this card. So again, here you can see that I'm going to use an envelope. This envelope is 6.5 by 6.5, so it does fit in a square envelope. You'll just have to pay a little bit more postage. This next card I'm going to be doing some ink blending, and I'm taking a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, which I cut down to a 5 by 7 size, and I just put some tape on the back and adhered it to my glass mat. I am using the Cherry and the Sunshine ink, and I'm just putting some ink on the cardstock. So I'm putting the Cherry up at the top and the Sunshine at the bottom, just using my blending tool to blend that out. And I am using the Bristol Smooth cardstock just because this is a large amount of ink that I'm putting on a piece of paper, and the Bristol Smooth, it holds large amounts of ink very well, and it doesn't saturate the cardstock too much, and I just love the way that it looks. So I sprayed it down with some water, and I'm putting a piece of paper towel on it and just pressing that down to pull up some of the ink. The water, it just pulls up some of the ink and puts a really nice look on the paper. Now I am taking another piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm using the stencil. So I'm just taping the stencil down to my glass mat, and I'm going to be using my sea glass ink and just starting from the edges, working my way in and just adding that ink to my stenciled paper. And for this part, if you wanted to just use regular cardstock or a colored piece of cardstock to add color onto color, you can do that. You don't necessarily need to use the Bristol Smooth on this part, but I did just because that's what I had. Now I'm going back to the original ink blended piece, and I did cut this piece down to 4 7/8 by 6 3/8 because that's the size that I want it to be when I add it to my card. I'm going to end up putting it on a card base that measures 5 by 6.5, which I purchased just a regular generic card bases from one of the large chain craft stores. Now I am taking the smaller egg die that came in the Easter egg fold-it die set that I used in the previous card, and I just die cut out of the middle of that cardstock. So the egg piece I can actually save for another project. I'm not using it for this card. I'm just using the cut out portion, the large rectangular piece for this card. So here I'm just ink blending some of the bunny pieces. I already die cut them out of the powdered sugar and the cherry cardstock. I also die cut the nose and the eyes out of the cherry as well as the storm cardstock, because what I'm going to do for this one is I am going to use the nose in the cherry, so I'm going to cut that apart, and then I'm going to use the mouth in the storm, so I cut it out twice. And here I'm just layering these pieces onto one another. I am again just using the solid cardstock. There is a card coming up where I'm actually going to be using pattern paper for this bunny, so here I'm just attaching. Notice I did use the cherry ink for the blending around the bunny just to give it a little pink fur. So here you can see me cutting the mouth in the storm, and then I'm just going to use the nose in the cherry, so I'm just cutting those apart there. And then remember, if you wanted to add some rosy cheeks, if you had one of those long blending brushes, you can do so. But I didn't have any of that, and I didn't want to even try it with the blending tool that I have because the tool that I have is not small enough. So unfortunately, my bunnies are not going to have rosy cheeks, which I've seen some of the cards on Pinterest and Instagram that look really cute with those rosy cheeks. So here I'm just attaching my ears. Notice I'm putting some glue just to the bottom and then putting the ears behind the head. So here I'm going to do some stamping. I wanted to put some flowers on this card, and I'm using the flowers from the Hummingbird class kit, and I'm also going to be stamping out the butterfly and the fence that came with the stamp set from this Sunshine Spring kit. So I'm going to be just doing a lot of stamping and coloring. I don't know. At this point, when I was making this card, I didn't know what I was going to use on the card, so I just stamp a bunch of flowers out, and I like to stamp extra images just in case I make a mistake when I'm coloring, go over the lines or whatever. I have extra stamped images that I can use to color. So you can use any flowers that you have in this particular part if you wanted to replicate this card. So the Hummingbird class kit unfortunately is no longer available. where I got these flowers from. So if you have any other flowers that you wanted to use, you can use them here. And because I'm going to be coloring with alcohol markers using my Copics, I have to stamp on special paper that's alcohol marker friendly, which is the Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth cardstock. And I also have to use an alcohol friendly ink when I'm stamping, which I've used the Spectrum Noir Finesse ink in flagstone color. So all that will be linked in my blog, as well as all of the Copic colors that I am using. So I'm going to be coloring some blues, some pinks, some purples, and just coloring several of the flowers. And basically I start with the dark on the inside and then go from the medium to the light all the way out to the petals. So really simple blend there, 3-color blend. The middle, I do dot some of the middles with some of the E47, which is the brown, so you can see that the middles have some brown specks. So my card base is just a generic card base that I picked up at one of those large craft stores. It measures 5 by 6.5. It's a larger size. And you can see here I'm kind of just playing around to see how I'm going to position this card. I'm going to start with my stenciled background, and I'm going to put that down on my card base. And my bunny is going to go kind of inside. It's inside of the card base, but some of his ears are going to be poking out the outside. So I'm just going to add a pencil mark to where I want my bunny to go, and then I'm going to put some glue on the back and then put him just slightly over top of that pencil mark. Then I'm going to add some glue to the back of this rectangular shape with the cutout of the egg and add that directly over top. And notice that the top left ear up there is still hanging out of the outside, so I do add a little bit of glue to apply that down. So here I'm just positioning where I want everything to go. I am using a grass die that came with the Step Up card base. It's the rounded corner Step Up card base. And again, just positioning some of these flowers and adding glue. And then I do cut some of the stems off because they are just a little bit longer than the card. I did add a little piece of tape, double-sided tape, to the bottom of this grass die, and I'm just putting a little bit of glue on some of the edges, but not all of those edges, because I still wanted that grass to have some look like almost like it was free-flowing. I am using the sentiment that came with the stamp set with the kit, Sending Spring Hugs. I stamped that out in cherry ink. Use a square die and add some ink blending in the sunshine ink to the edges. But then I decided that I wanted a little bit more of a background, so I just cut out a piece of the sunshine cardstock and added that to the sentiment. I did put some adhesive foam on the back of the sentiment, and I did fussy cut out the butterfly and colored it as well, and added a ribbon to the neck of the bunny. For this card, I'm going to start by stamping the sentiment Hello Spring, and I'm stamping it on some pattern paper using some licorice ink, which is the black ink. And I have a cherry polka dot piece which measures 4 1/8 by 4 3/4, and I'm adding some glue to that to adhere it to my powdered sugar card base, which measures an A2 in size. That yellow strip of paper with the sentiment measures 4 1/8 by 1 5/8, and I'm just adding that to the bottom of the card, making sure that because you're putting 2 different pieces of cardstock here, that you have equal white edges showing all around your card. I did use a ribbon die to cut out this ribbon, and I'm just putting it across the card, and that ribbon die, I did cut it on the side so that it measures 4 1/8 wide. I am using the Blue Jay paper for my bunny, and I'm using the Sea Glass ink to ink blend the edges because I don't have any of the Blue Jay ink, so I am using something similar, which is the Sea Glass. And I just noticed I'm just using my ink pad instead of my blending brushes because I was just trying to get this done quickly. And I do use the licorice for the eyes as well as the mouth. I do cut off the nose here. I could save that for another project, but I did cut the nose in the cherry. So I just cut those apart and then just kind of hooking them together here to create his face. Notice there that I also used a pattern paper for the inside of the ears. So I am just putting a little bit of a pattern there. I still am sticking with the solid color cardstock to the actual bunny. There is a card coming up where I'm going to die cut the bunny in some pattern paper, which looks really cute as well. So on this card, I'm just using the head on this card, not the whole body, so the head and the ears. And if I put the ears straight up, they'll go over top of the card. So I'm putting them in the corners. So you can see how the points on the ears are pointed towards the corners and a diagonal. So notice that I'm just applying glue to the back of the ears. I didn't connect the ears to the bunny's head. I'm actually connecting the ears by applying glue straight onto the cardstock because I want to make sure that it's in the exact position that I need it when I have everything applied to this card. And then just applying glue to the face of the bunny. And then I'm going to use some of the chipboard flowers that came with the kit, and I'm going to add them to the bottom of the card where the sentiment is. So I use a big and a small pink flower. And then last but not least, I do take a piece of the ribbon, the cherry ribbon, I tied a bow and added it to his neck. For this card, I'm using the Eggs for Easter stamp set, particularly these Easter eggs, which I can use the ones that have the patterns on them so that I don't have to do any coloring. I can just use my inks. So I am using my Misty. I've already put my Easter eggs that I'm going to use on the plate of my Misty. I'm inking these up with cherry and some pixie ink. And I do it a couple of times because I want to have a dark impression. And then I'm going to use the corresponding dies to die cut these out. So the nice thing about using the stamps that you can use your inks is that you don't have to color. And look how cute these turned out. So I went ahead and die cut my bunny, and notice here I'm using some of the polka dot pattern paper in the blue jay color. This bunny is going to turn out so cute. I do ink up the edges in the sea glass because I don't have any of the blue jay ink. For the ears, I did die cut just solid blue jay cardstock for the outer ear, and then for the inside I did the pattern paper in the cherry, as well as for the tail. So the tail is also the solid blue jay and the pattern paper. So inking those up with the cherry paper is being inked with the cherry ink. And then I am doing the nose with the solid cherry cardstock. And here I'm just going to adhere all of these pieces together. And I'm not going to show all of this process because I've already shown it in previous videos. So for the card base, I was going to go with this sunshine paper, but you'll see later on I changed to pixie. But for right now, you see the sunshine as the base. I do have a piece of powdered sugar cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then this heart pattern paper in the sunshine is cut with a large scalloped rectangle die. Now for this bunny, I didn't put it together off of the card. I'm going to put it together on the card because I want it to make it look like he's kind of running through the grass. So I'm kind of putting him together a little bit differently with his legs tucked kind of off behind him towards the right and his ears kind of going a couple different ways. I think this will look really, really super cute. So I also have a grass die, same grass die I used on that previous card from that rounded corner step up die set. And you can see here how it's just going to look like he's running through the grass. I think this is going to turn out really, really cute. So I'm adding the glue to the back of the pieces and adding them individually to my card front. And you can see with the tail, I did layer it up with some of the pattern paper and the blue jay paper as well. And those Easter eggs are actually going to be positioned in the grass. So I'm going to put one behind the grass and one in front of the grass. So that cherry egg is going to be adhered directly to the card base. I did put a strip of the tape at the bottom of this grass and a little bit of glue, not too much glue because I want the grass to look like it's free flowing. I am poking out some of the pieces that were stuck in this grass die cut and then just adhering it to the bottom of the card, just making sure that there's still some white edge showing underneath it because that white edge needs to be around the entire card. And I do add some foam tape to this pixie egg and add it in front of the egg that's behind it. And then here I was going to attach it to the card base. I decided to incorporate some more of the pixie color because I have pixie on that one egg. I decided to change the card base to the pixie. So a lot of pretty spring happy colors going on in this card. I also used a ribbon and tied it in a bow, used some hot glue, and am attaching it to the bunny's neck. For this card, I'm using a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock and my stencil that came in the kit, and I taped it down to my glass mat, and I'm using several inks here. I'm using the Sunshine, the Cherry, the Sea Glass, and the Pixie, and I'm just putting the ink down on this paper in random spots throughout to have a nice rainbow effect. And look how pretty that turned out. Now I'm taking the smaller egg die from the Easter egg folded die set, and I cut an Easter egg out of that stencil, and I'm using these funky scissors that I've had for an awful long time. I don't even know if they sell these anymore, but I'm cutting the middle with these scissors, and the blade on these scissors is actually going to make it look like this egg was cracked. I just love the look of this. And there are dies, I'm sure, that you can use to do the same thing, or you can just cut straight across with your paper cutter to cut your egg in half. Now I'm just putting my bunny together. I have the cherry cardstock, some pattern paper there, some licorice for the eyes. I did use a heart sticker that came with the kit for the nose. I thought that would be really cute. And now I have a card base, measures 5 by 6.5. The Sunshine paper 4 7/8 by 6 3/8. The Cherry is 4 3/4 by 6 1/4, and then the pattern paper is 4 5/8 by 6. So here I'm just going to start adhering these pieces of paper together. So the cherry is going to go on top of the Sunshine, and then the polka dot paper is going to go on top of that. And I'm going to wait to put that onto my card base just to make sure I don't have anything hanging off the sides. And I am going to take one of the cherry ribbons that come in the kit and tie a bow around the bottom of the egg. Basically, this card is going to have the egg that is open with the bunny inside. And I'm actually just tying it in a knot and then cutting off the excess because I'm not that good at tying bows. So here I'm taking a stitched rectangle die, and I cut it out of the Sunshine paper and adding one of the sentiments in the licorice ink, and then using my cherry cardstock to just cut a border around that die. And now I'm going to start adhering my egg to my card layer. So just using some liquid glue, I'm going to start by adding the top piece, and notice it's kind of at a diagonal so that it's open. And then I'm just positioning my bunny just to kind of get a feel for where I want everything else to go. So this is another card where I didn't attach the bunny fully out first before putting it on the card. I'm positioning it on the card just to make sure everything is where I want it so nothing's hanging off the edges. So I'm adding glue to the back of the ears, positioning them where I want them, making sure they're all within the layers. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach the head, and then I will add glue to the bottom of the Easter egg. And when I add glue to the bottom of the Easter egg, I want to make sure that the back of that ribbon is has a lot of glue on it. Also underneath that ribbon, I went ahead and just put some underneath there just to make sure it's fully attached. And notice that I start out by, you can see that everything's a little bit crooked. The bunny is not in the middle, so I kind of just have to move everything over. And that's the advantage of being able to use glue rather than double-sided tape, is that you can move things over and readjust because there's some time to do that. So here I'm just attaching the sentiment to the cherry cardstock and then attaching it with some glue to the bottom left hand corner. Now notice when I put it down, only the pink is showing, none of the pattern paper is showing, so I put it all the way against that pink edge. And now I'm just going to put some of these epoxy dots on my sentiment, some of the very small ones. I think it will just add a little bit of nice bling. And I chose to use the epoxy dots because they match the pattern paper, same color, in the ocean color. I think that's really pretty. So now I'm just going to add glue to the back of this entire card layer, and that's going to go on my card base. And remember that card base is a larger card base. It measures 5 by 6.5 inches. And that completes this card.
For this next card, I'm using some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth cardstock. I went ahead and cut this down to 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to do some stamping. I am using the Steffi Doll 3. I think that she is perfect for a spring card. So I'm going to color her up. I'm also going to incorporate the stamp set from the kit, the spring kit, into this scene as well. So I'm just using my Misty, and I'm just again placing this to create a scene. I'm also going to take the sun from the spring kit, and I'm going to put it there in the top right hand corner. And I'm going to put the sentiment here off to the right. It's sending spring hugs. And I'm going to put a fence in, but I'm going to wait just a few minutes because I'm going to do some masking with that. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to put my Misty plate down. It grabs the stamps. And since I'm going to be doing coloring directly on this cardstock, I am using an alcohol-proof ink. This is my Spectrum Noir Finesse ink, and it's good for alcohol marker coloring. So let's go ahead and press this down. All these little lines in her dress, we've got to make sure that all of them come out. So we'll probably have to stamp this up a few times. So next I put a piece of masking paper on my Misty, and I'm going to take the same stamp and I'm going to stamp it out. I'm just going to do it sideways just because I'm trying to save some paper. And it doesn't matter what kind of ink you use. I'm just going to use a regular black ink. Oh, let me fix that. I'm going to use a regular black ink just to stamp this out. Because what I need to do is I need to create a mask so that I can put another stamp behind that image. And if you don't have masking paper, you can use a sticky note. Will work just fine as well. It doesn't matter if it's not fully stamped like you saw, as long as the outline is there. That's really all you're looking for. And then you're going to take this and you are going to take your scissors and you're just going to cut around this piece. Okay? And I'm just trying to get as close to the image as I possibly can. Now, if you have the dies, yes, you can use your shadow layer, but I find that the shadow layer does not cut as close to the image as I want. So that's why I'm cutting this out. All right, so there's my mask. Next, I'm gonna put my stamped image, the one I wanna color, back on my Misty. And I'm gonna take my mask, and this is double-sided. It has adhesive backing that does not stick. It only sticks long enough for you to do your masking technique, and then you can actually take it up off your paper without it sticking and ruining the paper. So I'm gonna go ahead and just peel this backing off. Try not to rip this stamp. Okay, and then I'm going to line this up with my stamped image. I should have probably waited for that to dry. Okay, next I'm going to take my fence and I'm going to position my fence where I want it on my stamp, on my stamped image. And let me go ahead and bring this over to grab that. I'm going to need to put my magnet down a little bit further. And because I want to color this image, I am going to use an alcohol-friendly ink, the same ink that I used for the initial image. So we'll go ahead and stamp that out. I'm gonna do one more just to make sure it has a lot of ink. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up my fence and I'm just gonna move it over. I'm actually gonna wipe it down first. Just wipe it down, not with a lot of water, very light water, just because I know when I set this down on my paper, if it has ink on it, it could very well smear. So I'm gonna connect my fence. And let's stamp this up. All right, and we're gonna do the same thing, just wipe it down so it doesn't have much ink on it. Let's move it over. All right, so now we're going to pick this up, and there is our image that we can now color. And you can see how the doll, the stuffy doll, is positioned in front of the fence, and the fence is not covering her at all. It looks like it's behind. So masking is useful if you want to add a dimensional look to your stamped images.
So I went ahead and did some Copic coloring on this card layer, and unfortunately when I colored the hair, the video camera was not recording, so it's already done here. But I will put all of the colors that I used in my blog, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to go down to the description box and click on the link for my blog and see all the colors that I used. The same thing happened when I colored the fence. Unfortunately, the recording did not record, so the colors again will be posted so that you can see them. There is a card, the next card that I do in this video, a sample of how I did color the fence because I used the fence in another card.
So here's my finished coloring, and this paper, I don't know if I mentioned, it was cut down to 4 by 5 1/4, but I did trim a little bit of the bottom part off so that there's not so much white showing. I did use a grass die. It's a much smaller grass die. It's from the Borders die set, and I die cut it out of the kiwi paper, and I'm gonna go ahead and just adhere it to the bottom. I want some of her shoes to show, so I'm gonna kind of extend it down a little bit past, I mean, not much of her shoes are gonna end up showing, but I'm gonna extend it down a little bit past her shoes. Okay, so now I'm just going to take this, trim this off. And that's gonna layer on a piece of the cherry paper. And that's measured at 4 and, I believe it's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I need to cover up this ink spot that I ended up getting when I was doing some of that masking. So I'm thinking that I'm just gonna put some of these dots on this card. I hate to put one right above her head, but we're just gonna have to randomly position them. And I'm not sure if I like that. Another thing, I can put a flower up there. Let me see. I could put a flower, make it look like she has a flower in her hair. I could put one of these in the center. Yep, I think I'm liking that. So, and I don't have any pink, or I would do the pink. So we're going with yellow, and I'm gonna move it as far down as I can to make it look like it's in her hair. And then I'm gonna add one more dot over here. All right, so that completes my card, and I'm sorry about the coloring. I don't know what happened to the video, but some of the video, it wasn't videoing when I was doing the coloring, so I'm sorry about that. But that is basically how you can use your stamps, and you can use your masking technique, and you can get your fence behind, you know, the girl.
For this card, I wanted to make the ears a shaker element on my card. So I'm taking the ear dies. There's the 2 ear dies. The largest one I'm die cutting out of this pattern paper. And I want to make sure that I get as many hearts as I can inside of that die. So that's why you see me repositioning it there. And then just adding some washi tape, and I'm going to die cut that out of the pattern paper 2 times for my 2 ears that I'm going to have. And that's going to be the background layer for my ear. Then I'm going to take the smaller ear die and I'm going to position it inside of the larger one, and I'm going to put some washi tape on those 2 dies to connect them, making sure that the smaller die is directly in the center and there's equal space between those 2 dies. Then I'm going to take my cherry cardstock and I am going to die cut that cherry cardstock 5 times. So I'm going to start out with 2 layers, run that through my die cut machine. Those pieces there are going in the garbage, and I only need the center part, actually the very middle part. That piece there can just be set aside for another card. The piece that I want is this outline piece, and you need to die cut that 5 times, and those are going to be layered on top of each other so that you're building a wall for your sequins to stay inside of this shaker piece. So keep your washi tape on your die and die cut that again another 2 more times, and then another single time for a total of 5 die cuts that you're going to stack up. So the 4 pieces that you see there are going to be glued one on top of each other, and then the last piece is going to be covering the acetate. So I'm going to take a piece of acetate and I'm going to attach one of the die cuts using some liquid glue, and I'm just going to attach it flat onto the acetate. Now if you wanted to just use that large oval die and cut the acetate out with your die cut machine, you won't have to trim it like I'm doing in this case. So here I just took a flat piece of acetate, attached the cardstock oval, and I'm just trimming the acetate away with my scissors. But if you didn't want to have to do the trimming, you can just die cut your acetate in that same oval shape, and then you wouldn't have to trim that off. So that's going to be my very top layer. Now all of those other layers you're going to glue on top of that purple piece. So just add some glue, add it to the purple piece, stack them up. And again, this is going to create the wall that's going to keep the shaker elements inside. Now it really just depends, like you probably might want to know how many pieces of cardstock do I really need. Well, it just depends on how thick your shaker pieces are. If they're small shaker pieces, you're not going to need that many layers. If you have thicker shaker pieces, you're going to need more layers. And I'm using the cardstock rather than foam because I find that the foam is just more flimsy. And here's an example of, I kind of just did an example with the foam, and you can see all the white, and it's kind of an unfinished look, whereas the cardstock pieces, it's just one solid color and it's more finished, more clean. So here I'm just adding the pieces, the shaker elements in. You can see my pieces are really small, so I did add the 4 pieces of cardstock, layered them up, and then I'm going to add the acetate layer right on top. So there's my shaker piece. So now I need another one because there are 2 bunny ears. So again, start with your base layer, take your die, it should still have the washi tape on it, die cut that out of 5 pieces of cherry cardstock. Okay, and then take one of those pieces, put it on top of an acetate piece, so add glue to the back, put it on top of the acetate piece, cut around to cut the acetate away, or you can take that large die and die cut it to get the oval shape on your acetate if you wanted to do that. But here I decided to use the scissors. And then once you've trimmed all the acetate, set that piece aside and go ahead and build up the layering pieces there. So add glue to the back of the cherry cardstock, add it to your pattern paper, and continue to add glue to each one of those ear outlines. So again, here you're making your wall so that your shaker bits stay inside, so you're just building up your cardstock layers. And once you have your last piece, go ahead and add your shaker bits to the inside. Another nice thing about not using the foam is that it's not sticky. Sometimes when you use the foam, the shaker pieces stick to the foam and it's hard to get off. So add your pieces and then add some glue to that top layer, just around the cardstock, and then add your very top acetate piece right on top of that to keep those shaker bits inside. And there are your 2 shaker ears. Aren't they cute? So here I'm using the fence stamp that I previously stamped out at the beginning of this video, and I am going to be coloring this up using some grays, and I am using my darkest gray, which is my C4 here, and just putting some color on the little pieces that are already marked on the stamp, and then I'm extending that color out with some C2, and then I'll eventually get into the C0, which is my lightest. So I'm using 3 Copic colors here. Then I'm going to use my craft knife and I'm going to cut the insides out. Remember, there's no dies that come with this particular stamp in your kit, so I want to use this by cutting it out. So to cut the centers out, I'm going to use my craft knife. So here you see me using my craft knife, just coming around those lines on just those center pieces. The rest of the fence I will just fussy cut out with my scissors. So my card base is going to be powdered sugar, measuring A2 in size. I also have a piece of cherry cardstock, which I actually already attached to the card base. It's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I do have a scalloped piece of the powdered sugar. It's cut with the scalloped rectangle die. And then I have that green checkerboard. It's 3 3/4 by 5 1/2. My bunny is out of the pixie cardstock, and the eyeballs looks like it's out of the storm, and the mouth out of the cherry, and I did use one of the heart stickers that came in the kit for its nose, and then I also have a piece of pattern paper for its legs. So I'm just attaching these layers together, and then I'm just going to position my bunny where I want it to be on the card. Again, I'm not positioning it in the standard straight line format like I did in the previous cards. I'm going to kind of make it so that it looks like it's walking. I was thinking about putting that pom-pom for its tail, but at that moment I hadn't decided what I was going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and start adhering the bottom part directly to my card base, and that fence I'm just going to adhere there as well. I just really added that fence just for some decoration and just to incorporate it onto the card. And when I position the fence, notice that it's just coming to the edge of that green paper. It's not extending beyond that. Now, I forgot to ink blend the bottom portion of the bunny, so I had already attached it at this point, so I did ink blend its head. I did put some foam. I'm actually standing up its face just because I want to make sure that the ears are tucked behind it, and because the ears are so thick, I have to add some foam to its head so that I can insert those ears behind the head. So going ahead and adding the ears down with some glue. I decided not to use the pom-pom for the tail, but it would be a cute idea. And I went ahead and cut the tail out of the cardstock layers, the cherry and the pixie, and just layering those on and adding some foam to the tail. I figured I'd go ahead and let that tail stand up as well to add some more dimension. And then that little piece on top of the tail, you can actually use it for a flower if you wanted to add that as a flower to your fence and put some epoxy dots in the center. I thought that would be really cute. But instead, I decided to just use these pretty little flower pieces that I had that came with a previous kit and just added those to the fence. I did not add a sentiment just because there was no room to add a sentiment to this card. So I'm just leaving the way that you see it there. You can always add a sentiment on the inside. So here are all of my cards, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and make sure you subscribe for more card making inspiration. Bye bye.